Okay, this is part two. You've been warned. You've watched the video about 2S versus 3S builds and the reliability of 2S, but you still want the 3S. And you've already seen my video about running the car through, I think, 80 batteries or so. So now it's been well over 150, probably 200 batteries. And I'm going to talk to you about what to expect of the 3S. Okay, the reason I am kind of yawning about that is because it's not something exciting that I want to tell you because it's not going to be reliable. Okay, there's going to be modifications you're going to have to make, and some people are totally okay with that, and some people have a bigger budget and they're totally fine. Whatever it is, I think you need to have your expectation and know that this is going to happen so that when you need to dedicate the time to doing upgrades or installing stuff or figuring stuff out or going on YouTube or on how-tos and stuff like that, then you're not frustrated. And that when you're spending more money, you're not frustrated because you're expecting it because you watched this video. Okay, so we're gonna go over all those things. I'm gonna try to give you as much detail as I can and prioritize the different mods so that you have an expectation of what is coming. Okay, and again, this is 3S, and it's not my full recommendation, but speed is impressive, and the pricing and value of it is good. Okay, but longevity as far as repairs and maintenance, it's gonna be ongoing. Okay, so we're gonna go over the stuff right now. Okay, everyone thought this was a rat or a dog, so I put some green stickers on there so they don't think it's some spooky little thing. All right, so the first thing, okay, I'm not one of those guys who's gonna say you have to modify everything, and if you haven't done that, then it's no good, okay? But it's very true what they say about the servo, okay? The servo is the one thing that I would actually buy with the brand new car because it will die. And one of them died in less than 20 packs. And one died in, I think, a little bit more than that. But basically, your servo will die. The servo is the weak point. It is very, very poor for this build, stock from the factory. Okay, so the servo is going to be something that you're going to want to budget into it for sure, for sure. Okay, and the thing is, we're going to talk next about the shocks, and I have kind of a different take on on my opinion originally. And the stock shocks, the shaft kept coming off this part, okay? And you'd have to glue it back on, and then you go on Facebook and everyone says, buy this shock, buy this shock, buy that shock, this shock is no good, blah, blah, blah. And so the truth of the matter is, before I had recommended buying the stock shocks because number one, they were cheaper, and number two, you buy them in pairs so that if the other one were to break, then you have the backup already and you don't have to spend any more money, okay? Whereas if you buy a set of 4 and those break, then and you have 3 stock good ones, then you're kind of out of luck. You're gonna buy another set of the fancy ones, okay? But since then, and that was about a year ago, the prices of these shocks have gone down from $40 to $29, okay? And a stock set is about 25 for the 4. Okay, so 25 for the stock, 28 for these ones. Basically, these are the eBay ones, and I paid 35, I think, on sale from 40. And these you can get now, I just checked like 10 minutes ago, for under $29, plus tax, free shipping. Okay, so we went over the servo, we went over the shocks. Okay, so I do now recommend that you get these shocks if you're on a budget. And when I say on a budget, that's, again, 30 bucks, 35-ish, or I paid 35. And yeah, there's going to be a whole swarm of people saying, buy the 6S ones, you know, you'll never go back, they're the best, but they're also like $100. So not everyone has that kind of budget, not everyone wants to spend that kind of money, okay? So servo, shocks. The other thing, okay, and this is a big headache, it's going to be about the motor mount, okay? You'll notice this is not the stock motor mount. So by now, if you've watched enough videos or you've driven the car enough, you'll know that the red motor mount here, during crashes or just hard landings, will bend. And when that plate bends, yes, you can bend it back. Yes, you can buy a new one. Yes, you can buy replacement ones, but they will still bend. And what that does is it messes up the mesh between your gears, and then that's going to strip it. And then you're going to think there's something wrong with the mesh, and there is, because the motor mount was bent even by a little bit. Okay, so the M2C racing ones are like $80 by the time it gets to your door, and that's for 2 pieces of metal, okay, which I felt was way, way, way too expensive. So I, went the route that everyone, the cheaper route of buying new motor mounts. And I bought Hot Racing one, I bought the stock one, I got, I went back to Arrma and got them under warranty. And so I've gone through like probably 4 or 5, I think 4 motor mounts before I finally discovered and decided on this one. And so Hot Racing made basically a knockoff of the M2C Racing one. And I've been testing this out on a few batteries and probably 15 battery packs, I'd say. And so far, so good. And I have hit light poles and pretty hard concrete and stuff like that. So I have gone through the tests, and this is still working just fine. And this Hot Racing one costs, I think, $45. I'll put some info in the description below, but it's basically half the price of the M2C Racing one. Another option for a motor mount is going to be a 3D printed thing that basically sits under here and holds the motor. Because right now the motor is stuck on here and it's basically cantilevering off. And during jumps, it kind of goes like that and it bends the motor mount. So there's a bracket that you can buy that holds this up. That's probably like $8 or $11. I have not used that, but I was tempted. But in the end, I just went with the Hot Racing one, so I can't say anything about the reliability of that because I have not tested it. If you have, go ahead and leave that in the comment below if you want to share with other people who are watching this video. Another thing that you may want to look at is, or that you probably have been looking at, is you'll find that if you're driving in gravel or dirt or whatever, debris gets stuck in this gap here, okay? And then that basically messes up the shaft, the center shaft, because this is plastic. And eventually it could break or wear out. So you're thinking of the 3D printed cover, which is fine, except we bought the Arrma because it's modular and it's easy to take stuff apart. So if you have something over it, then there's just one more thing that you got to take apart before you get into the inner workings of it. But of course, there's an argument of if it protects it, then you're less likely to need to get in there, and so therefore it doesn't matter. But I have kept it open. And the reason I kept that open, and the reason I've kept this plastic, because there is metal versions, is that if you have, the solution to all this RC stuff is not necessary to make something stronger, okay, because it's weak. The forces don't disappear. The forces move to the next weakest link. Okay, so you can imagine if this plastic drive shaft was metal and this is metal, okay, and then you have a rock there between metal and metal, it's not going to be good, okay? It's not like the rock's going to fly away more easily. This will be more durable, but there's just that much more friction and that much more forces between two metal parts, which is not good. I'd much rather that this $10, $12 piece break and I get a new one, and that it breaks, and more importantly, that it warns me that there's something there. So what I've done is actually every time I run the car and I'm changing packs, I just take note of whether there's debris in there. And then I turn the thing upside down, I'm shaking it around. So that has done me well. I used to have a 3D printed thing, but I no longer have that because I didn't feel it was necessary for the reasons that I described. And I've stuck with the plastic one. And yes, I have contemplated the metal one, but my final decision is to keep the plastic so we're not having metal on metal. And then after every pack, I just look and it's totally fine. For the big rock in particular, rocks do get stuck, do manage to get in the hole here. Okay, the little clearance on the chassis for the servo arm to move around, and it does get in there. Okay, now you can't see from the camera, but basically it prevents your steering from happening because it's physically blocking. So if you find that your car only turns in one direction, not the other direction, don't force it, okay? Please do not force it. You're going to turn the wheel in the direction that it can go, and then you're gonna look in there. You're gonna physically look in there and make sure there's no rocks and no debris. And if there is, then you're just gonna turn it upside down or take a wrench or something and then kind of wedge that out and you'll be fine. And generally I stay away from areas that have rocks that size or mulch, which can get caught in there too. But finer dirt and dust is not gonna be as much of an issue or any issue as far as it preventing steering from happening. Okay, so if you have the 3S BLX or plan on getting it, I'm gonna go ahead and price out all the stuff we talked about so you have an idea of what to expect. If you're buying this brand new and you are new to RC, that's going to be a different video, but I do not recommend this for you if this is your first RC. But if you are and you've already made up your mind and you're getting 3S BLX, the car itself I believe is like $330 or $350 plus tax, and then people are going to recommend a set of tools for maybe $15, $20. And then you'll need the big bore shocks, which is 30, the servo, which is about 25, and then the hot racing motor mount, which is about 50. So add that all together, plus your hobby grade charger, which is gonna be about, I would say about $100, including or maybe plus adapters of like $10, $15-ish. And then maybe a discharger, but those are gonna be your basic costs. And you add that all up, and if you're okay with that price, then I think you're okay. Okay, if you're not okay with that price, I highly recommend that you get something else, because unfortunately, these are gonna be what you're gonna need to have this run reliably. Okay, I cannot say with 100% certainty because I have not run through enough packs through the Big Rock, the car that has the hot racing motor mount, but I do suspect highly that that is keeping the mesh good. So once the mesh is good and the hot racing motor mount is on, it is basically rigid enough to prevent the mesh from coming loose, which is what's causing the stripping. It could also be it is a combination also of accuracy or how good the mesh is set initially, but I believe that the hot racing motor mount helps that substantially. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't talk about replacement spur gears in the list of must-haves for parts. Okay, there you have it. Those are the 3 upgrades I recommend, and that is the servo, which is a must. It's not even an option. You have to get the servo, and you can get it on AliExpress, you can get it on Amazon. It's basically I'll put in the description, I forget. It's blue and there's a red one, and they're both much stronger than the original one, which is terrible, like absolutely terrible. I don't have high expectations, but it's actually terrible from experience with multiple cars. Okay, so servo, and then your shocks. Go with aftermarket one, especially now. The pricing is under $30 for a set of 4, and the stock ones I think are 25 or 26 for a set of 4. So the price difference is pretty negligible. I would go for the upgraded ones from eBay. And again, they're reasonably priced. The third thing is going to be the motor mount. Okay, whether you go with the one that's a bracket that kind of supports the end of the motor, or whether you go with the hot racing one that I did, up to you, but be expected to buy one of those. If you're considering the M2C racing one, that's totally fine. But for me personally, I just felt like it was very very out there as far as the price. I mean, $80 for 2 pieces of metal, just like it's like unfair. It like made me angry. Like, no, I'm not gonna spend that money. So when Hot Racing, a legitimate company, came out with a knockoff of the M2C racing bracket, I bought it, tested it, and it works just fine so far. So those are 3 upgrades I recommend. Anything else I think would just be for fun or just extra. I don't think is as necessary. Some of you are going to ask me in the comments inevitably about this guy, and this is a Traxxas piece, and this is basically just to prevent too much scratching or cracking when this thing goes upside down. This mounts with the included hardware, but you do need to buy washers to make it work. And you'll find instructions on Facebook, or I'm sure someone has a YouTube video on how to install that. So that's it. Until next time, bye-bye.